This is a spot I wanted to look at from the Triton 50K in Monte Carlo. I had a situation where I end up shoving twos five-handed with a pretty good chip lead, and I felt pretty good about these twos, but I was second guessing just how wide I get to shove here and where I should start raising for value, mostly because of a 50K I played at PCA about 6 months prior to this, where I got a little bit too shove happy with a big chip lead, and it worked out for me, but I definitely ripped too many bigs. So I kind of wanted to go over this spot and hear your thoughts.
Yeah, these can be quite finicky. And what you're looking at first and foremost is how much of a chip lead you have relative to what the average stack is, and what factor or what multiple do you have everyone covered by. So I think that twos are definitely going to be a rip. I think as you move up the pocket pairs, you have some questions to ask in terms of at what point do you want to start inducing? And of course, you're also curious about just how wide do you get to go all in here? Is it any ace? Is it any suited connector? Can you go all in with queen three suited? Before we look at anything, what is your kind of go-to in terms of thought process? What does it anchor on for getting a feel for this kind of spot?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm definitely considering that first point you made, which is how far is the distance between me and the field. I would say the first kind of anchor in my mind is what is the next largest stack? If there's somebody out there with 25 big blinds, that's going to give me a lot of pause, even if the rest of them have 10 big blinds. Naturally, I would be a little bit more worried than if everyone was at, let's say, 16. I don't know how correct that is, but I would say if there's an initial anchor, it is what's the next largest stack.
Okay. Yeah, good stuff. What I like to do for wrapping my mind around these sort of spots is not just look at this particular spot, but look at spots that might look like it, but are perhaps different, and kind of calibrate what my ranges are by looking at some spots that are a little bit worse and some spots that are a little bit better, and then tying together the underlying ICM concept. So we can do that with the compare tool in GTO Lab, and I'll start off by filtering for five-handed, since we are five-handed. And what I want to make sure to do is to filter for an average stack that is applicable to what we're dealing with. So I like to start wide and then narrow it down a little bit if necessary. So start off with 25 big blinds max for the average stack. We are in the hijack with the chip lead. And again, I'll do something like just cap everyone at 20 to start, just to get an idea of what solutions I can look at that are going to be similar to the spot. Now, the spot that we're dealing with, it's about 18 big blind average. So we're going to be looking predominantly at the 17 big blind average sims. However, I do also want to look at some 24 average big blind sims. So first we can look at something that is fairly close to the situation that we are dealing with. And I would say this here is going to be fairly similar. It's a little bit worse of a spot for you. And it's worse because you have a lower multiple of the average stack, and there's not a 6 or 7 big blind stack. So you're effectively, on average, shoving for a little bit more chips, but that's a good starting point. And for the other one, let's pick out maybe a spot that would be a little bit better, just so we can kind of get two extremes. So something like this would be, I think, clearly a little bit better. The biggest stack is the same. You have a slightly bigger multiple of average stack, and there's actually two short stacks, which helps. So we can start off by looking at these two sims and see how your strategy compares and what's similar and what's different. On the left, I would say, is kind of like a worst case scenario for being in a spot like this.
These are so much more different than I would have guessed.
Yeah. And then on the right, you could see that it is much looser, obviously, but this is also a better spot than what you are looking at.
Sure.
Let's talk about some of the underlying mechanics. So we see that what we're inducing with is roughly similar between the two sims. Obviously, the ranges are very different. We're going all in almost twice as much on the right. But what we're comfortable inducing is kind of the same. It's sevens plus, and then we kind of go ace jack plus, ace jack suited plus, or ace 10 suited plus. So that's going to remain fairly consistent. And the reason for that is because we're looking to accomplish something specific when we're designing both an inducing range and a jamming range. When we jam, we want to get hands that are better to fold. When we're inducing, we obviously want to induce from worse hands. So we see that hands like ace 9, ace 8, ace 7 suited, they're actually not inducing in either scenario. And the reason for that is because the call-off ranges in both are going to be so tight that you actually generate folds from significantly better hands if you shove. So always useful to click through the sim a little bit and kind of look, all right, well, if I rip it in here, yeah, cutoff is shortest, is going to call off quite wide. Button, second shortest, getting a little tighter. Where it's going to get really tight is the small blind, who is in this very distant second place. Pairs only. Now, of course, not everyone's going to play like this, but this is kind of the source of the equilibrium. So when you put all of that together, it makes sense that you're shoving ace 9 suited and down in both scenarios because you're just generating folds from hands that are better. And the opposite is true for where you draw the line for inducing with the pairs. You really do want to induce sevens and better. You just get shoved on by worse pairs. So for example, if you were to open here and it goes to the later positions, you're going to be able to pick off the big blind with these low pairs that would have folded if you just open ripped. Of course, it is sort of a balancing act with, well, if you rip sevens, you know, maybe you get a fold from a jack 10 suited or some other suited ace that would have ripped on you, and that's a trade-off that you have to think about, but that's what I would be considering.
And maybe there's a slight benefit to you open those sevens or eights and two people shove and you just get away.
For sure. Anytime that we have someone or the whole table covered, leaving more nodes is always going to be better, especially because with such a low average stack, not losing even 7 or 8 big blinds is extremely important. It's a huge portion of your stack. It's a huge portion of the overall chips in play. Having said all that, while it is beneficial to leave extra nodes with specific classes of hands, you made a slam dunk play with the pocket twos. It's definitely a shove in either scenario. It's a shove in the worst case scenario, it's a shove in the best case scenario, and it's going to be a shove in any scenario in between if we were to look at more sims. So let's take a look at how this turned out for you. Let's see, so Ponikov's is tanking. What are you guys looking at over there?
He's got the stacks up on his phone, so we're discussing. I think I'm telling him I kind of have a flipping hand, prefer he just doesn't call, and he said, "Let me take my time. I'll put 4 time banks forward." I asked him where he got that leopard skin jumpsuit. He said, "Not tell."
Where did he get it?
I don't know. It looks like Goodwill.
Yeah, he can't just look at the stacks, huh?
Said, "Fuck it.
Right.
I'm tired.
He puts the
Tired of doing math." Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
that
that
looks to
math
be
is hard. I call.
a I'm tired of doing math sort of call. But hey, it is a difficult spot for him, and I think it is genuinely close.
I think what he hadn't factored in was that nobody had hit an ace on me yet, but he did have the nine.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if you know you're not going to hit the ace, you can't be calling off with ace nine.
Are you a Mighty Ducks fan?
I love the Mighty Ducks.
Ducks fly together. Flying
Wow,
V.
you look like you're expecting something there.
I think I said quack right there.
Oh, the pain! The pain. Wow. You'd think someone in a leopard suit wouldn't be afraid of ducks, but
Yeah, I mean, leopards run pretty quick. He's ready to get out of there.
all right.
So, in fact, it was a good shove.
I can confirm by the river it was a great shove.
Excellent.